The inn at the village was called the Red Fork and Barrel, small and warm, with a fire that was doing its actual job. The innkeeper was a barrel-shaped man named Wall who had 3 chins and strong opinions about his own ale. His niece worked the common room. She was short and very round and pretty for a big girl, with dark eyes and a laugh that arrived without warning. The inn dress she wore was cut low enough that her cleavage arrived in the room slightly before the rest of her. She was soft all over, wide through the hips, with the kind of figure that looked like it had been designed with comfort in mind, for herself as much as anyone else. Dunk noticed. He stared for a beat longer than was decent, looked away, and then looked back, because he was only human and there was a great deal to look at. She noticed Dunk almost immediately. 7 hells, she said, looking up at him. Did your mother fall in love with a tower? Just tall, said Dunk. She looked at his bandaged leg, and recently shorter by the look of it. Her name was Mina. She brought him ale without being asked and brought Egg a bowl of soup and scratched Lord behind the ears with the ease of someone who liked dogs and was not particular about which ones. She asked Dunk how he'd got the leg, and he told her some of it, and she listened with her chin on her hand and her eyes dark in the firelight. Egg ate his soup and read his book and said nothing, which was considerate of him. Later, when Egg had gone up and the common room had emptied, Mina came and sat across from Dunk and refilled his cup without asking. You fight, she said. I'm a knight, said Dunk. She looked at him. Is there a difference? Dunk thought about it, sometimes. She smiled at him, not the way people smiled when they were being polite. Dunk went a bit warm. He looked at the table. He did not have to be uncertain long. She took him by the hand, both hands were needed to get around his, and led him out through the kitchen and into the dark behind the inn, where the trees came close to the wall and the stars were clear between the branches. He was extremely grateful, and also thoroughly clumsy about it. It started with the branch. He had not seen it in the dark, and it caught him across the ear hard enough that he made a sound that was not romantic in any sense of the word. Mina stopped. Are you all right? Fine, Dunk said, from somewhere nearby. Did you just? No, Dunk said. She laughed. He could not see her face in the dark, but the laugh was warm and it had no cruelty in it, which helped. Then his knee found the root. He went down onto it with his full weight, which was considerable. Bloody hells, Dunk said. Dunk. I'm fine. You're kneeling. I know I'm kneeling. She took his arm and helped him up. When he was standing again, she kissed him, slow and deliberate, and then stepped back and unlaced the front of her dress. What followed was, in Dunk's opinion, the single greatest thing he had ever seen in his life. He stood there for a moment with his hands at his sides like a man who had just been told some very important news and needed a moment to absorb it. She tilted her head. You can touch them. He did. His hands were enormous and rough, and she was very soft and warm, and he was embarrassingly reverent about the whole thing, which made her smile in a way that was not unkind. There, she said, better than starring. Yes, Dunk said with some feeling. When he was standing again, she looked up at him, a long way up, and then looked at the space they had to work with, and then back up at him, and pressed her lips together in a way that suggested she was doing calculations. Right, she said, we're going to have to be creative about this. He was a great deal of man for a small space, and she was not a tall woman, and working out the geometry of that took a minute and some repositioning and one suggestion from her that made him go red in the dark where she could not see it. But they got there. And when they did, the look on her face told him he was doing something right, which was information he found extremely encouraging. Afterward they lay in the dark, and she asked him how old he was. 21, Dunk said. She was quiet a moment. Was that your first time? He said nothing, which was as good as saying yes. She put her head on his chest, there was quite a lot of it, and said good, in a tone he couldn't quite interpret but which felt kind. He told her he was grateful. He said it honestly and without thinking, which made her laugh long and warm. Don't tell me that, she said. It makes me feel very responsible. In the morning, Cotter's convoy was loading in the yard. Mina appeared at the kitchen door with bread and hard cheese wrapped in cloth, which she gave to Egg without ceremony. Egg accepted it with the careful courtesy of a boy pretending he had not noticed anything. Dunk stood beside Meister and was aware that he was loitering. I could stay, he said. A few days, the leg could use the rest. Mina looked at him. You couldn't, she said. She stood on her toes, grabbed a fistful of his shirt and hauled him down far enough to kiss him on the jaw. He bent without argument. Go with the convoy. There's a road and you're meant to be on it. She took his hand and led him around the corner of the inn, out of sight of the yard, and gave him something to remember the morning by. He was considerably more competent about it the second time. Afterward she leaned against the wall. My husband is a castle guard at Riverrun, she said. He's been gone 6 months, back in 1 maybe 2. She said it without apology. I'm glad you came through. Dunk stood very still. Oh, he said. You're not the first, she said, in case that helps. It did help. He was not going to think too hard about why. She kissed him once more quickly, and went back inside. Dunk stood in the alley. Lord appeared from somewhere and sat on his foot. "Don't," Dunk said. Lord looked up at him. Dunk scratched his ears and went back to the convoy. Chapter 3. Dunstonbury. 214 AC Dunk, 22 Egg, 14. 8 months after Gory's Tyrrell hit the dirt, Dunk had not been back to the pits. Not because Cotter had stopped asking. Cotter had not stopped asking, but something had shifted after the Tyrrell bout. Some door had opened, and Cotter, being Cotter, had walked through it before Dunk had fully decided to invite him. "You don't need the yards anymore," Cotter said, one evening outside a tavern near Riverrun, turning his cup in his hands. "You need lists." He meant it. That was the strange part. Cotter, who had built his livelihood on men hitting each other in barn floors for the entertainment of people who could not be seen to enjoy it, had looked at Dunk and decided there was more to be made elsewhere. He found the tourneys. Small ones, local ones, the kind held in market towns, and on the grounds of minor lords who wanted the prestige of a tournament without the expense of inviting anyone important. He got the invites. He provided a young horse for the jousts, a brown gelding with an even temper that Dunk privately thought was smarter than most men he had fought, and took 10% of whatever Dunk earned. 10% of not much was not much, but Cotter seemed to think that would change. The first tourney did not go well. Dunk came fourth and rode home with a bruised shoulder and nothing to show for the entry fee. The second was worse. He unhorsed himself on a poorly timed lance and Egg did not say a word about it, which was somehow more painful than if he had. The third Dunk lost in the second round to a knight from a minor Riverlands house who had been doing this for 15 years, and found Dunk's inexperience with the lance about as threatening as a stiff breeze. It was costing more than they were earning. Both of them knew it. Neither of them said it. The fourth tourney Dunk won, though one was perhaps a generous word for it. His opponent in the final round, a broad, capable knight named Sir Otho something, had his horse stumble on a rut in the fourth pass and lost his seat trying to correct it. Dunk had been losing that joust and they both knew it. He took the purse anyway. 52 bronze bits. Egg recorded it in the ledger without comment. Third in the fifth, fourth in the sixth, third in the seventh. Second in the eighth, which felt like something. First in the ninth, which felt like more. Second in the 10th, a close loss to a knight who had clearly done his reading on Dunk by then, and first again in the 11th, against a field that was still low tier but no longer embarrassingly so. The 9th tourney had come with a prize beyond the purse, a decent jousting shield, better than the one he had, with a fresh coat of paint that Egg immediately began picking off to repaint with Dunk's sigil, such as it was. After the 11th, he had been given a pair of steel greaves that actually fit him, which was rare when you were nearly 7 feet tall. Somewhere in the middle, the 7th or 8th he thought, a minor lord had thrown in a good wool cloak as part of the prize, deep green, heavy, and Dunk had worn it every cold morning since without complaint. Small things, but they added up. He looked less like a man who had assembled himself from a rubbish heap, which had been the general impression for most of the past 2 years. He was getting better. Slowly, unevenly, with setbacks that still stung, but getting better. He could feel it in the way opponents approached him now with more caution than they had 8 months ago, with the particular wariness of men who had heard a name and were not entirely sure what to do with it. The name helped. The hedge giant, they still called him on the circuit. In the tournament towns it was just the tall, or sometimes just the size, which preceded him into rooms whether he liked it or not. He was nearly 7 feet of it, which was the kind of fact that settled arguments before they started and occasionally started ones he had not been looking for. Other things preceded him too, lately. He was not sure when exactly that had started. Somewhere around the 7th tourney, women had begun to notice him in a way they had not before. Not all women, but enough. Plump ones especially, for reasons he did not examine too carefully, seemed to find him interesting, and he was 21 years old and not made of stone, and he had learned from Mina that grateful was not the worst thing to be. Egg was 13 and pretended not to notice any of it, which Dunk appreciated. The current town was a river settlement 2 days west of Riverrun called Amberford, large enough to have 3 inns and a notice board, and a weekly market that smelled of fish and ambition. They had been there 3 weeks, which was long enough for Dunk to have fought in one tourney, placed second, and become acquainted with a widow named Alice who had 3 children and a directness about her that he had found startling at first, and then refreshing. She was a big woman, wide through the hips in the way of someone who had carried 3 children and not apologized for any of them, with heavy breasts that sat low and warm against him at night. He did not mind any of it. If anything, he minded the opposite. She had made her intentions clear on the second evening, over ale, while her children were asleep upstairs. "I'm not looking for a husband," she said. "I had one, he was fine, I just want company sometimes." She was 32 and knew exactly what she wanted, which was different from Mina and different again from the younger women who giggled and pulled at his sleeve after tournaments. Dunk obliged. He was good company, or was trying to be, and she seemed to agree, and her children liked Lord, which Lord reciprocated with his usual lack of discrimination. But his time in Amberford was nearly done, 1 tourney left, then the road again. Egg had already started watching the notice boards. The tournament at Dunstonbury was announced on a board outside a cooper's shop in a village called Trent's Mill, nailed between a notice about a missing goat and an offer to buy old rope. Egg read all three notices with equal attention, which was a habit Dunk had stopped trying to correct. "There's a tournament," Egg said. "Where?" asked Dunk. "Dunstonbury, 8 days' ride, if Meister holds the pace." Egg looked at the horse. Meister looked back at Egg with the expression he reserved for people who said things like "if Meister holds the pace. 7 days if we don't stop to let Lord chase things." Lord, who was currently chasing something in a ditch, did not respond to this. "Entry fee," said Dunk. 5 silver stags," said Egg. "Prize is 25 and a helm." Dunk looked at him. "Crafted by Sir Wilbert Cray," Egg said, with the tone of someone reading from the notice. "Master blacksmith of Dunstonbury, it says renowned." He paused. "The helm you have has been repaired 4 times and the visor sticks." "The visor doesn't stick," Dunk said. "It sticks when it rains," said Egg. "It's fine when it's dry," Dunk said. "It rains a lot," said Egg. Dunk said nothing for a moment. 5 silver stags was more than they'd held at one time. It was more than what they had, and then some. "We have 2 silver stags," said Egg. He said it in the voice he used when he already knew what Dunk was going to decide, and was simply providing the relevant information so they could get on with it. "Prize?" asked Dunk. 25 silver stags for the melee, 5 for the joust, 2 for the squire's tilt." Egg paused. "I'm too young for the squire's tilt." "You're too young for most things," said Dunk. He looked at the notice, then at Meister, then at the road going east toward Dunstonbury, which was not a bad road as Riverland's roads went. "We're 3 stags short." "We have 2. We need 3 more," said Egg. 2 silver stags are not 5, Dunk said. "Technically they're not, but the gap between 2 and 5 is smaller than starting from nothing," said Egg. "The question is whether there's a way to earn 3 silver stags between here and Dunstonbury." "Or find it," said Dunk. "Or find it," Egg agreed, with the tone of someone who considered this a less reliable strategy, but was willing to leave it on the table. Lord climbed out of the ditch. He had not caught whatever he was chasing, and did not seem troubled by this. He shook mud onto Dunk's boots and sat down. 8 days, said Dunk. 7 if we move, said Egg. They moved. It came from a farmer outside a village called Oates Cross, 2 days east, who needed someone to move a dead ox out of his well. The ox had been there for 3 days and the smell had developed opinions. Dunk moved the ox. It took 2 hours, a rope, Meister's full cooperation, and a level of personal contact with the situation that he did not feel was fully reflected in the 3 bronze bits the farmer paid him. Egg stood upwind the entire time and took notes in his book, which he said was for practical reference, and Dunk said was not helping. Lord tried to eat part of the ox. Don't, said Egg. Lord did not. They picked up another job 2 days later, a mill owner outside a village called Heron's Cross who needed 2 cartloads of grain moved before the rain came. 4 hours' work, split between Dunk and Meister. 8 bronze bits. Combined with the ox money, they had 1 silver stag and chain, and the smell of the first job still faintly on Dunk's boots. Dunk spent the rest of the day smelling like the farmer's opinion of the situation. They camped that night in a field off the road. Dunk washed in a stream that was too cold and too shallow, and did not fully solve the problem. Egg built the fire and cooked the bread and said nothing about the smell, which was the kindest thing he could have done, and Dunk knew it. Cotter's cart found them on the road the following morning. He pulled up alongside them without ceremony, looked at the notice Egg was holding and held out his hand. Egg gave it to him. Cotter read it, handed it back and looked at Dunk. You're short, Cotter said. 2 silver, Dunk said. I know how much you're short. Cotter reached into his coat. He produced 2 silver stags and held them between 2 fingers without offering them yet. 3rd place pays 3. You give me the 2 back first before anything else. And if I don't place, Dunk said. Then you owe me 2 silver, Cotter said, which you'll pay from the next one. Dunk looked at the coins, then at Egg. Egg had his arms folded, which meant he had opinions he was not going to share until later. Why, Dunk said. Cotter tucked his cup under his arm. Because you're better than you were 6 months ago, and that helm is embarrassing both of us. He dropped the 2 coins into Dunk's palm and clicked his horse forward without waiting for a response. Egg watched him go. Entry fee in the morning, Egg said. Entry fee in the morning, Dunk agreed.